Hey up everybody, my name's Joshua Morrison, director of Johnny Mozzers, Lessons in Confidence, and today I want to talk to you a little bit about music equipment and how more expensive equipment does not necessarily correlate to better music. Now, for the past 4 years I've been recording music and I've been using Harley Benton guitars. Now Harley Benton guitars are like the cheapest of cheap guitars that you can possibly get. You can get one guitar for like 80 quid. Right? And they're all like replicas of, the various standard models of guitar, your Stratocasters, your Jazzmasters, all that sort of stuff, your Les Paul. Like you can get a Harley Benton version of basically any guitar you want, right? And they've got the cheapest of cheap sensors and the cheapest of cheap pickups in them. They're made of really cheap wood. They're made really cheaply. And you know what? I've been using them with the stock pickups in them. I've not done any adjustments to them. And you know what? I think they sound fine. I think they sound all right. I put them through the amp, and the amp isn't necessarily the most expensive amp ever. I use a a Vox Voice 25 or something like that. I can't remember what the name of the amp is, but it was like 100. It was like 100 quid. It wasn't like some mega amp. It wasn't like the loudest amp in the world or anything like that. And the guitar isn't the best guitar in the world. And you know what? What makes the music good isn't the equipment. It's the talent that goes into it. And my music has gotten better and better and better, kind of as my equipment has gotten worse and worse and worse. Because when I first started, I was using a lot of my granddad's equipment. And he had all like kind of nice original Stratocasters from the 70s and all this sort of stuff that cost a lot more money. And he had a big Vox stack sort of thing. He had loads of stuff like that. And I was using all of that for my very first few albums, right? And my first few albums are wank, right? But then I ended up using my own stuff, right? And just finding that the music got better as I got worse equipment, right? And it wasn't because of the equipment itself, it was because I, as a guitarist and a general musician, was improving. And the same happened to you. As you get better and better at making music, you'll find yourself probably getting less and less precious about the sort of equipment that you're actually using. You don't need to be a gearhead. If you look at like most of the famous musicians out there, right? Like Noel Gallagher, I remember seeing an interview of him where apparently it was only in about 2015 that he found out what the tone knobs on amps were and kind of used for, because he just used to whack like bass, treble and mids all the way to 10. And then when someone said, you can kind of dial them in to hone in a tone, he was like, what? Can you? Oh, okay. And he tried it and he found he really liked it. But he'd done so many albums, he'd probably done like 15 albums using just everything turned all the way to 10, because it's not the equipment that makes the music. The music makes itself, and you, the artist, make the music. Because music isn't a recollection of equipment being used, it's a combination of lyrics, melodies, rhythms, progressions, ideas, so on and so forth, and ambiances, right, in general, okay? So you don't need good equipment to make good stuff. You don't need the highest, latest and greatest thing. You don't need that thing that's on your eBay wish list. You don't need to buy it costs $2,000. You don't need the fucking thing, all right? Because say you get that thing, right, and it comes to your door and you use it and you really like it, right, and you put it on a song, right, and then it just becomes your new thing. Is your music going to get better as a result of it? No. It's going to sound basically exactly the same as it did before, right? It might sound more expensive, possibly, depending on what it is, right? Because obviously there are some things where if you just get the cheapest thing, it will sound cheap, right? But as long as you can differentiate and use your intelligence and your common sense to kind of figure out what sounds good and what doesn't, that's the important thing. You can use the cheap drums. The main reason that people get more expensive drum kits isn't because they sound better, it's because they last longer. The reason that people get these expensive guitars from the 70s and stuff isn't because they sound better, it's because they last longer. And a guitar from the 70s costs like $4,000, right? And a Harley Benton guitar costs about 80 quid, right? So how many and a Harley Benton has lasted me about 4 years, right? Say it breaks tomorrow, right? So you're not really paying any more at the end of the day. You're paying 800 quid for 40 years compared to £4,000 for 40 years. And I just think that you'll save money in the long run by not worrying so much about this stuff and just making what feels true to you, using the equipment that you feel comfortable with, and not worrying so much about the next best thing that you can get. Because once you get that thing, there'll be another fucking thing that you'll want. And then you'll want that and you'll feel like you're missing out on something because you don't have it. And then once you get that, there'll be another thing that you'll be missing out on. And all this money could go towards more important things like keeping a roof over your head or food in front of you or whatever, right? And you could put the money and you could put your time and dedication towards making better music, right? So I hope that kind of made some level of sense in that whatever equipment that you've got at the moment, right? Be it the cheapest of the cheap sort of thing, or maybe you're just like borrowing like your parents' instruments or whatever, you know, just use stuff that feels right to you. Just use whatever you can and make music with whatever you have access to. You ever go on like the YouTube short stuff? There's so many like people on there that are very talented that use like stupid little things to make cool music. Like I saw someone, he had like a Toys R Us sort of fiddle sort of thing, and he was covering Dream Theater with it, right? Like it shouldn't sound that good, but because he's got the talent to do that, he can make it, right? And you know what? If you master your instrument and it's a shit instrument, because like the guitar neck on the Harley Bentons isn't the smoothest, right? So if I was to move to a more expensive guitar with a cleaner neck or whatever, right? And it would probably make my fingering a bit easier to do, my skill level would probably improve as a result of that, because I essentially jumped into the deep end and I swum to the shallow end. And now I can stand in the shallow end and float. Whereas before I would have just sunk, right? Because it's the doing what you can with what you have mentality, essentially. Because you have what you have, so you might as well use it rather than pining for something far away that you can't have right now. And then only once you have that can you make the good stuff. Because you're never going to go to Abbey Road and record an album there. You're never going to play the Red Rocks. You're never going to do all these sort of things. So don't try and make music and then sit and get yourself down because it's not on the level of like the Beatles recordings or whatever, because they had money behind them in order to go and do that sort of stuff, right? You can make whatever your sound is sound as good as it possibly can, and then it will sound as good as the Beatles because you've made songs that are interesting, right? And you've done something that resonates with other people. That's the key thing. And it doesn't actually need to resonate with other people. As long as it resonates with you, that's the important thing. As long as it resonates with yourself, sod everybody else, as far as I'm concerned. That's the way I would see it. So I hope you managed to get something out of this. I hope this was a fairly logical sort of point that I'm trying to make here, in that you don't need better equipment and that you don't need to get yourself down because you haven't got good equipment. Because some of your favorite guitarists, some of your favorite instrument doers, right, they started with nothing. They started with bugger all. Look at Bushy One String. He's got a one-string guitar and he managed to make something out of that. Look at Madhu Mattar, or however you pronounce his name. He started off in a country where they made it illegal to play instruments. And he made his own guitar out of like wood and string and buckets and stuff. And he managed to learn the guitar that way. And then once he was able to buy a guitar, because I think they reverse the law, he was brilliant at it because he'd spent so long practicing with this utter pile of shit. Right? And, you know, I think it's a much more interesting story for Madhu Mattar to go and do that with the limited resources and capacity that he had than it is for someone like, I don't know, the members of Dream Theater who went to Berkeley Music School, dropped out of music school to start a band and then just became successful. Which of these two stories is more interesting? I would say the Madhu Mattar one is more interesting. And that's not to denigrate some of Dream Theater's music. I like a lot of Dream Theater's music, even some of the wanky stuff. But the point is that you don't need to get yourself down about your circumstances, because you can still make great art with it. So thank you very much for watching this video, everybody. Hope you got something out of it. Take care. Have a great rest of the day. Ooh.